transit was flawed. Brother Captain Castian felt it the moment the strike cruiser Blade of Titan translated into the immaterium. The currents of the warp were unusually violent, poisoned by a psychic stink that spoke of ancient, festering evil. Their Geller field, a fragile shield of imperial faith made manifest, flickered under the assault. Castian stood on the teleportarium platform, his squad of 5 Grey Knight Terminators arrayed around him. They were giants in Aegis pattern armor, silver and gold, inscribed with litanies of protection. Their Nemesis Force weapons hummed with contained, psychic power. Their mission was critical, a pinpoint strike against a cultist stronghold on the cardinal world of Viridia Prime, where a coven was attempting to summon a keeper of secrets. The runes on the teleportarium flared, the air shimmering as the machine locked onto the target coordinates. But the warp storm intensified. A wave of pure, immaterial force slammed against the cruiser, and the Geller field collapsed. For a single, horrifying instant, raw chaos flooded the teleportarium chamber. Castian felt the minds of his battle brothers scream as daemons, things of nightmare and impossible geometry, tore through the failing wards. He raised his wrist-mounted storm bolter, unleashing a torrent of explosive shells into the swirling madness, even as he drew upon the full might of his own, sanctified soul. He felt the teleportarium activate, but it was wrong. The target lock was gone, replaced by a desperate random shunting of energy. He felt himself being pulled apart, atomized, his physical form dissolving into the warp's chaotic embrace. But his mind, his soul, was a fortress, forged in the fires of Titan, shielded by 66 wards of psychic protection, and anchored by an absolute, unshakable faith in the God Emperor of mankind. His essence could not be so easily consumed. He became a point of pure, cold silver light in the howling darkness, a shard of holy will adrift in an ocean of damnation. He felt a tearing sensation, not of his body, but of reality itself. He was being pulled through a membrane, a thin, fragile wall between dimensions. The transition was agonizing, a feeling of being simultaneously crushed and expanded, burned and frozen, then silence. And impact. He did not materialize cleanly. He crashed. His massive half-ton suit of Terminator armor slammed into something soft and yielding, mud, thick and black, with enough force to create a small crater. Emergency systems flared, reporting multiple microfractures in the ceramite plating, but the core integrity held. Life support was functional. He pushed himself to his knees, his movements stiff, his senses reeling. The air was wrong, thick, heavy, and saturated with the stench of decay, old blood, and something else. A palpable aura of ancient, deeply ingrained evil. It was different from the raw chaos of the warp, yet sickeningly familiar. It was the smell of a world that had been steeped in damnation for millennia. He looked around. He was in a field of mud and grasping, skeletal trees, under a sky the color of a dying bruise. Rain fell, cold and miserable. In the distance, silhouetted against the gloom, were the jagged, skeletal ruins of what looked like a desecrated church. He reached out with his psychic senses, a standard Grey Knight battle scan. He felt life, yes, but it was twisted, corrupted. Small, chittering minds filled with a base, animalistic malice. Larger, slower minds radiating a cold, dead hunger. And beneath it all, a deep, foundational wrongness, a spiritual infection that seemed to seep from the very soil. Brother Justicar Theron? Castian's voice boomed inside his helmet, expecting the calm, disciplined reply of his second-in-command. Only the hiss of static answered. He extended his senses further. A desperate, galaxy-spanning psychic reach for the light of the Astronomicon, the guiding beacon of the Emperor's will. Nothing, only the oppressive, suffocating darkness of this one single damned world. His brothers were gone. His ship was gone. His galaxy was gone. He was alone, stranded in an unknown realm, surrounded by the evidence of demonic corruption. He felt no fear. He felt no despair. Such emotions were luxuries afforded to lesser men. He was Brother Captain Castian, Grand Master of the Third Brotherhood of the Grey Knights, Chapter 666 of the Adeptus Astartes. His mission parameters, though violently altered, remained fundamentally unchanged. He had found a nest of daemons. His purpose was to purge it. For the Emperor, he rose to his full, towering height, his nemesis force sword igniting with a low, hungry hum, its silver blade beginning to glow with a pure, white, sanctified light. His crusade had begun anew. Castian began to move through the blighted landscape, his Terminator armor a walking fortress of silver and gold against the mud and decay. His every step was heavy, deliberate, crushing the grasping roots and skeletal remains underfoot. His autosenses scanned the environment, tagging potential threats, analyzing the strange, corrupted flora. The rain plastered strands of dead vegetation against his armor, but he ignored it. Discomfort was irrelevant. He identified the source of the chittering, malevolent thoughts almost immediately. They swarmed from the ruined buildings and the soggy earth around the desecrated church. Small, red-skinned creatures, hunched and grotesque, with sharp claws and glowing, hateful eyes. Some wielded crude, spiked clubs, others carried jagged, rusty knives, fallen imps. To Castian, they were simply lesser daemons, foot soldiers of the great enemy, filth to be cleansed. Among them, he sensed a slightly stronger, more focused mind, a shaman, its crude staff crackling with a weak, profane energy. They saw him, and their chittering rose to a fever pitch of mingled fear and aggression. They were creatures of instinct, and the sheer, overwhelming presence of the Grey Knight, the cold, hard certainty of his holy power, was both terrifying and an irresistible challenge to their chaotic nature. The shaman raised its staff, and a bolt of sickly green energy lashed out. Castian simply raised his storm shield-emblazoned shoulder pauldron, the aegis field flaring momentarily as the weak sorcery dissipated against it. Abominations. His voice boomed from his external vox grill, a sound of judgment that momentarily silenced their chittering. Your existence ends now. He charged. He was not a berserker like the warriors of the Space Wolves. He was a Grey Knight. His charge was a disciplined, unstoppable advance, a wave of pure, kinetic and psychic force. The fallen swarm surged to meet him, a tide of red flesh and rusty iron. They crashed against his armor like water against rock. Their claws screeched uselessly against the blessed ceramite. Their crude blades buckled and broke. Castian's nemesis force sword came alive in his hand. It was not just a blade, it was a conduit for his own immense, sanctified psychic power. The silver blade glowed with an incandescent, white-hot light. He swung. The first arc of the blade passed through a dozen of the creatures. There was no spray of blood, no satisfying crunch of bone. The moment the psychically charged edge touched their corrupted flesh, their physical forms were not just cut, but annihilated. They dissolved into clouds of black, greasy ash that dissipated instantly in the rain. Their souls, their very essence, were simultaneously extinguished with a final, silent, psychic scream of utter agony that resonated only within the warp, or whatever passed for it in this blighted dimension. He moved through them with a terrible, beautiful grace. Every movement was precise, economical, lethal. A thrust vaporized an imp leaping from a ruined wall. A downward slash erased 3 more that were clawing at his legs. He was a whirlwind of silver and white light, a single, holy warrior performing a ritual of absolute, uncompromising purification. The fallen, creatures born of chaos and driven by instinct, had never encountered anything like this. They knew pain. They knew death. They knew the fire of angels and the magic of mortals. They did not know annihilation. They did not know the concept of their very essence being unmade. Terror, a primal, existential dread, began to grip their small, hateful minds. They broke, they turned and fled, scattering back into the ruins, their chittering now a sound of pure, mindless panic. Castian did not pursue the lesser creatures. His target was the source of their limited cohesion, the shaman. The shaman, its eyes wide with terror, tried to raise its staff again, to conjure another pathetic bolt of profane energy. Castian was faster. His wrist-mounted storm bolter roared to life, a sound of imperial thunder in the dead quiet of the ruins. A single, explosive bolt round, blessed and sanctified, struck the shaman squarely in the chest. The creature exploded. not into gore, but into a brief, violent flash of green, warp-like energy, which then collapsed in on itself and vanished, leaving behind only the faintest smell of brimstone and failure. Castian lowered his weapon. The first skirmish was over. He had cleansed this small pocket of corruption. He scanned the area once more. The lesser daemons were fleeing. The leader was destroyed. He knelt in the mud, amidst the fading ash stains of his enemies. He ignored the rain, the cold, the stench of evil. He bowed his head and began the first of the 66 rites of detestation, his voice a low, resonant chant, purging his own mind and soul of any possible taint from the battle. His duty was clear. His resolve was absolute. This world, whatever it was drowning in darkness, and he was the Emperor's light, sent to burn it clean. Deckard Cain, last of the ancient Horadrim, huddled beneath a makeshift lean-to fashioned from the fallen timbers of a ruined cottage. The rain was relentless, mirroring the perpetual gloom that had settled over the lands around Tristram since the return of the primevals. He was old, his bones ached, and his heart was heavy with the weight of knowledge and the burden of his failing quest. He was searching for answers, for prophecies, for any scrap of lore that might offer a glimmer of hope against the encroaching darkness. He had returned to the ruins of Tristram, the site of the original tragedy, hoping to find some lost text, some forgotten rune, in the wreckage of the old cathedral. The sudden violent cessation of the familiar, maddening chittering of the fallen imps startled him from his tired reverie. He peered out from his shelter, his old eyes straining in the gloom. The unnatural silence was more unnerving than the usual sounds of demonic activity. Then he saw him, a giant, taller than any man Cain had ever seen, clad in armor that shone with a soft silver light even in the rain-drenched twilight. It was armor unlike any depicted in Horadric texts, massive, ornate, yet brutally functional, covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint inner power. The giant knelt in the mud, seemingly oblivious to the rain, its head bowed, its deep, resonant voice chanting in a language Cain did not recognize, yet which felt ancient, powerful, and strangely ordered. Around the kneeling figure, the ground was littered with strange black patches of ash that seemed to sizzle and fade even in the pouring rain. Cain recognized the lingering stench of demonic essence, but it was coupled with a new, clean smell, like ozone after a lightning strike. His scholar's mind raced, trying to categorize what he was seeing. Was it an angel? No. The angels he knew were beings of light and grace, their armor golden, their wings brilliant. This being was heavy, solid, a creature of iron and stone and unwavering grim purpose. Was it a new kind of demon? No. The power radiating from it, though immense and terrifying, felt clean, pure, utterly hostile to the corruption that saturated this land. A golem, perhaps? An ancient construct animated by forgotten magic? But it moved with a lifelike fluidity. And the chanting held a depth of fervent, absolute conviction that spoke not of arcane programming, but of a soul engaged in holy ritual. His curiosity overcoming his fear, Cain slowly emerged from his shelter, leaning heavily on his staff. He approached the kneeling giant cautiously. Castian's psychic senses registered the old man's approach long before his physical senses did. He felt a mind that was ancient, weary, and filled with a vast, jumbled library of knowledge. But it was a human mind, frail, but untainted by the daimonic. He completed his rite and slowly rose to his feet, his full height eclipsing the old scholar. He turned his helmeted head, the blue optical lenses fixing on Cain. His internal threat assessment registered the man as non-hostile, but his classification remained uncertain. A primitive, possibly a local holy man, a hedge wizard of some kind, or perhaps a rogue psyker, his mind fractured by uncontrolled warp exposure. Caution was necessary. "Identify yourself, human," Castian's voice boomed, the high Gothic words likely meaningless to the old man, but the tone of absolute authority unmistakable. Cain stopped, startled by the sheer, amplified volume of the voice. It sounded like it came from a great, brass horn. He raised a hand in a gesture of peace. "Stay a while and listen." He began, his traditional heraldic greeting. "I am Deckard Cain. I am a scholar. I mean you no harm, mighty one. I seek only to understand. What manner of being are you? Have you come to fight the shadow that plagues this land?" Castian's internal translator, a sophisticated linguistic cogitator within his helmet, struggled with the archaic dialect, but managed to grasp the core meaning. "Scholar, fight the shadow. I am Brother Captain Castian of the Adeptus Astartes, Grey Knights chapter," he replied, the translation protocols rendering his titles into the closest equivalent the local tongue could manage. "My purpose is to purge the daemon, to cleanse the unclean. This world reeks of their taint." Cain frowned, the names and titles meaning nothing to him. Adeptus Astartes? Grey Knights? Purge the daemon? It sounded like the language of a holy warrior, yes, but of a kind he had never encountered. "Daemons, yes," Cain agreed, nodding his weary head. "The legions of the burning hells have returned. Diablo, Baal, Mephisto, the prime evils stir once more. Is it the high heavens that sent you? Are you an agent of the Anguirus Council?" Castian processed the new names. Diablo, Baal, Mephisto, prime evils, high heavens, Anguirus Council. More unknown classifications, more local superstition. "I serve only the God Emperor of mankind," Castian declared, the name spoken with a reverence that was absolute. "He is the master of humanity, the light in the darkness. All daemons are his enemies, and his alone. These prime evils you speak of are merely uncatalogued manifestations of the great enemy. They will be purged, as all heresy must be purged." Cain was now utterly bewildered. God Emperor of mankind? Great enemy? This warrior spoke with the absolute conviction of a holy man, but his cosmology was entirely alien. He was fighting the same war, but under a completely different banner, for a completely different god. "Your armor," Cain stammered, his scholar's curiosity momentarily overriding his confusion. "Your weapon. They hum with a power I do not recognize. Is it magic?" "It is the blessed science of the Imperium, guided by faith and will," Castian replied curtly, unwilling to elaborate on the sacred mysteries of Astartes' war gear to a primitive. "It is sufficient for the task at hand." He turned his gaze back towards the ruined cathedral. "This place," he stated, "it is a focal point for the demonic taint. I will cleanse it." He began to stride towards the cathedral's broken archway, leaving Deckard Cain standing alone in the rain, his mind reeling with 1,000 unanswerable questions. He had just met a warrior of impossible power, a being who seemed utterly devoted to destroying the forces of hell. But he was also a being whose origins, whose faith, and whose ultimate purpose were a complete and terrifying mystery. Cain could only watch him go, and pray that this new, iron-shod footstep on the world stage was a step towards salvation, and not towards a new, colder, and even more absolute form of damnation. The arrival of Brother Captain Castian was not merely a physical event. It was a psychic detonation, a ripple of cold, hard, disciplined will that spread through the very fabric of Sanctuary. It was felt not just by the denizens of the mortal realm, but by the powers that resided beyond it. In the Silver City, the heart of the high heavens, the Anguirus Council convened beneath the shimmering arches of the courts of justice. The air, usually filled with the harmonious resonance of the crystal arch, was now subtly discordant, troubled by a new, alien frequency. Tyrael, the Archangel of Wisdom, stood at the center of the council, his brow furrowed, his spectral wings shimmering with a troubled light. As the aspect of wisdom, his senses were attuned to the balance of reality, to the flow of fate and possibility. Castian's arrival was a jagged anomaly in that flow. "A new player has entered the great conflict," Tyrael announced, his voice a low, resonant chord that echoed in the celestial chamber. "A warrior of immense power has manifested in the ruins near Tristram." Imperius, the Archangel of Valor, clad in his golden armor, scoffed, his voice sharp and arrogant. "A mortal. Another Nephilim, perhaps. Let them fight their petty battles. Our war is with the prime evils, not with ambitious humans." This is no Nephilim, Imperious, Tyrael countered, his tone grave. I have felt his presence. It is cold, hard, like forged iron. He radiates a power, yes, a power that is utterly hostile to the demonic. But it is not of the light. Oriel, the archangel of hope, her gentle face filled with concern, spoke next. I too have felt him. There is a purity to his intent, a singular focus on the destruction of evil. But his methods, the echoes of his first battle were brutal, absolute. He does not just kill, he annihilates. There is no mercy in him, no compassion, only duty. Ithriel, the archangel of fate, his form indistinct and ever-shifting, offered his own cryptic insight. His thread is not woven into the scroll of fate. He is an unraveling, a loose strand from another tapestry entirely. His future, and the future he will forge for sanctuary, cannot be seen. The council fell silent, troubled by this revelation. An unknown power, hostile to hell but not allied with heaven, operating outside the bounds of prophecy and fate itself. It was a variable that could shatter the delicate, eternal balance they fought to maintain. Imperious, ever the warrior, saw only a potential threat. He is an anomaly, unsanctioned, uncontrolled. His power rivals that of the Nephilim, perhaps even surpasses it. He must be contained or eliminated before he disrupts the very fabric of creation. No, Imperious, Tyrael argued, his voice firm. We do not know his true nature. We do not know his origins. To strike him down now would be rash. He fights our enemy. He sheds the blood of demons. He could be a powerful, if unwitting, ally. An ally who speaks of a false emperor? Imperious sneered. An ally whose power stems not from the arch, but from some alien source of cold will. He is a heretic, Tyrael, a blasphemy. He must be purged. His faith is not our own, Oriel interjected softly. But perhaps faith itself, in any form that stands against the darkness, holds merit. We must seek to understand him, not simply condemn him. The debate continued. The fundamental conflict between valor's rigid certainty, hope's compassion, and wisdom's caution playing out once more. But they could reach no consensus. Castian was an enigma, a paradox that their celestial understanding could not easily categorize. Finally, Tyrael made a decision. As the aspect of wisdom, the burden of understanding fell to him. I will go to the mortal realm, he declared. I will observe this warrior myself. I will look into his soul and gauge the true nature of his light and his shadow. Only then can we know if he is a weapon to be wielded or a fire to be extinguished. Imperious scoffed but did not object. The council adjourned, leaving Tyrael alone in the great chamber. He looked down, through the mists of heaven, towards the wounded, bleeding world of sanctuary. He felt the cold, hard point of Castian's presence, a silver nail driven into the heart of the land. He did not know if this gray night was a sign of hope or a harbinger of a new, colder doom. But he knew, with an archangel's certainty, that the eternal conflict had just become far more complicated. The psychic death scream of the fallen shaman was not a loud event in the grand, chaotic symphony of the burning hells. It was merely one voice among billions, extinguished in an instant. But the way it was extinguished, that was different. That was noted. Deep within the realm of destruction, surrounded by jagged fortresses built upon rivers of fire and despair, Baal, the Lord of Destruction, stirred from his malevolent contemplation. As one of the three prime evils, his consciousness was vast, his senses attuned to the suffering and chaos that fueled his existence. He had felt the ripples of demonic activity around the ruins of Tristram, a familiar, pleasing echo of his brother Diablo's past triumphs. Then, he felt the anomaly. It began as a cold spot, a sudden, jarring silence in the usual psychic noise of the mortal realm. He felt the minds of 100 fallen imps simply cease to exist. Not die, not flee, but be unmade, their petty, hateful essences annihilated with a terrifying finality. He felt the shaman's spirit reach out, not in defiance, but in pure, soul-shredding agony, and then vanish utterly, leaving behind only a cold, clean void. This was not the work of mortals. Their weapons killed the body, but the essence returned to the hells to be reformed. This was not the work of angels. Their holy light banished. It burned, but it rarely destroyed utterly. This was something else. A power that operated on a different axis entirely. It was a cold, hard, and utterly unforgiving power, a psychic force that felt like purest order, wielded with the intent of absolute destruction. It was an anathema, a force fundamentally opposed to his chaotic nature, yet it was not the familiar, cloying light of the high heavens. It was something new, something alien. Baal's ancient, infinitely cruel mind was filled with a surge of something akin to curiosity, mingled with a deep, instinctual rage. A new player had entered his game, a new piece was on the board, and it was playing by rules he did not recognize. He reached out with his own vast consciousness, his senses probing the mortal realm, searching for the source of this disturbance. He found it. A single mind. A mind like a fortress of polished, impenetrable steel. It burned with a cold silver light, a light fueled not by hope or compassion, but by pure, fanatical, unwavering certainty. And beneath the certainty, there was hatred. A hatred as deep and as wide as his own, but focused, disciplined, and utterly controlled. A hatred for him, for his kind. Baal laughed, a sound like mountains grinding together. A mortal? A single, arrogant mortal who dared to wield such power? Who dared to stand against the Lord of Destruction? He felt the creature's nature. It was human, yes, but transhuman. Its mind was a weapon. Its armor was a relic of impossible power. Its soul was a blade, honed to a perfect killing edge. This was no mere Nephilim, blossoming with chaotic, untamed power. This was a finished weapon, a perfect soldier, a holy warrior forged in the fires of a faith Baal did not know. The Lord of Destruction saw a challenge. He saw a threat, but he also saw opportunity. This being's power was immense. Its will was absolute. Its hatred for demonkind was perfect. If such a being could be broken, if its faith could be shattered, if its cold, disciplined power could be turned to the service of destruction, what a magnificent champion he would make. Far greater than any mindless brute or treacherous sorcerer, Baal's strategy began to form. He would not send his legions to crush this warrior immediately. That would be crude, predictable. He would test him. He would probe his weaknesses. He would send his champions, his elite, to measure the Grey Knight's strength, to feel the limits of his power. And while his champions fought and died, Baal himself would begin the true battle. He would whisper to the warrior's soul. He would find the cracks in his faith. He would use the inevitable despair of this war-torn world to poison his certainty. He would turn his own strength against him. The game had just become infinitely more interesting. The Lord of Destruction had found a new, exquisite toy to break. Brother Captain Castian continued his methodical purge, moving eastward from the ruins of Tristram, following the psychic spoor of demonic corruption. He was a silver ghost in the blighted wilderness, his Terminator armor allowing him to stride through treacherous terrain and poisoned marshes as if they were parade grounds. Every encounter with the creatures of this world, the shambling, plague-ridden zombies, the skittering, venomous quill rats, the brutish, axe-wielding Khazra goatmen, ended the same way, with swift, absolute, and merciless annihilation. He was not just killing them, he was performing a ritual cleansing, erasing their foul presence from the land with every swing of his Nemesis Force sword and every explosive bolt from his Storm Bolter. He was a force of absolute, uncompromising order in a world drowning in chaos. He detected the next concentration of demonic energy near the decaying, moss-covered stones of a forgotten monastery. As he approached, the sounds of battle reached him, not the mindless screeching of demons, but the crackle of arcane energy, the sharp report of projectiles, and the defiant shouts of a human voice. He crested a low ridge and looked down into the monastery courtyard. A lone figure stood amidst a swirling vortex of arcane power, surrounded by a horde of Khazra. She was a woman, clad in dark, practical leather armor, a heavy crossbow in one hand, the other crackling with raw, uncontrolled magical energy. Bolts of lightning leaped from her fingertips, incinerating goatmen. Explosive traps detonated under the feet of the charging horde. She fought with a desperate, chaotic fury, her power immense but seemingly untamed. This was Adria, though Castian knew her not. A woman touched by the ancient power of the Nephilim, her abilities blossoming in the face of the world's encroaching darkness. Castian's tactical assessment was instantaneous and utterly without sentiment. Threat analysis, multiple low-level demonic entities designation, Khazra. Single human female combatant. Human combatant analysis, unsanctioned psyker. Power level, Delta. Control, minimal. Threat level, potential hereticus extremis. His doctrine was clear. Unsanctioned psychers were a grave danger, ticking time bombs of potential demonic possession. They were to be contained or, if necessary, purged. But the immediate threat was the daemons. His primary duty was to cleanse the unclean. He would deal with the witch later. He charged down the slope, his storm bolter roaring. He did not announce himself. He did not offer aid. He simply opened fire, his explosive bolts tearing through the Khazra ranks, adding his own disciplined thunder to the chaotic storm of Adria's magic. Adria spun around, startled by the sudden deafening roar of the bolter and the appearance of the silver giant. Her first thought was that hell had unleashed some new, terrible siege engine upon her. But then she saw it cutting down the Khazra, with a ruthless efficiency that surpassed even her own destructive power. The psychic presence of the newcomer washed over her, and she recoiled. It was cold, hard, and utterly alien. It felt like a glacier, immense and unfeeling. There was no rage in it, no passion, only a profound, chilling certainty. It was a power utterly unlike the chaotic energies of hell or the warm light of heaven she had only ever heard of in stories. The Khazra horde, caught between the Grey Knight's disciplined fire and Adria's chaotic magic, faltered. Their brutish minds could not cope with two such different and equally devastating forms of attack. But their chieftain, a massive horned beast wielding a great, two-handed axe, ignored the silver giant and charged the source of the magic. It charged Adria. She raised her crossbow, but the creature was too fast, too strong. It smashed the weapon from her hand and raised its axe for a killing blow. Castian saw it. His tactical logic registered the imminent loss of a temporary, if potentially heretical, combat asset. He reacted. He shifted his bolter fire, a single perfectly aimed burst striking the chieftain's axe arm, shattering the bone and sending the weapon flying. He then charged, his nemesis force sword igniting. He reached the chieftain just as it turned its enraged attention towards him. A single, clean, upward thrust of the glowing silver blade, and the Khazra chieftain dissolved into fading ash. The remaining goatmen, their leader annihilated, broke and fled into the ruins. Silence fell over the courtyard, broken only by the crackling of Adria's fading magic and the low hum of Castian's force sword. He turned his helmeted gaze towards the woman. She stood panting, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear, awe, and deep suspicion. "You wield the power of the warp." Castian's voice boomed. An accusation, not a question. Untrained, uncontrolled. "You are a danger to yourself and this world." Adria stared back, bristling at his tone. "The warp? I don't know what you're talking about. This is my power, and I use it to fight the demons that plague our land, just like you, it seems, though your methods are less subtle." "Subtlety is a luxury the righteous cannot afford," Castian retorted. "The daemon must be purged, utterly, without compromise. Your chaotic energies are a potential gateway for their influence." An uneasy, almost hostile, truce settled between them. They were both fighting the same enemy, but their methods, their beliefs, their very natures, were fundamentally opposed. One was a creature of absolute, rigid order and faith. The other was a being of burgeoning, chaotic, and fiercely independent power. They were allies of circumstance, destined for conflict, but for now, the shadow of the burning hells kept their own animosity at bay. The ruined monastery courtyard was merely the threshold. Brother Captain Castian could feel the true heart of the demonic taint emanating from the desecrated cathedral that loomed over the crumbling cloisters. It was a psychic cesspit, a focal point of corruption that had to be cleansed. Adria watched him, her expression a mixture of fascination and apprehension, as he strode towards the cathedral's shattered, Gothic archway. "Wait," she called out. "You cannot just walk in there. The place is riddled with traps, undead guardians, and worse. I barely escaped with my life the last time." Castian paused, turning his impassive, silver helmet towards her. "Traps are irrelevant to the faithful. The undead are merely puppets of the great enemy, their strings waiting to be cut. And there is nothing worse than the daemon itself. Stand aside, Psyker. This is a task for the ordained." He ignored her protests and entered the cathedral. The interior was a vision of desecration. Pews were overturned. Altars were defiled with blood and profane symbols, and the air was thick with the stench of rot and decay. From the shadowed alcoves and the high, crumbling balconies, shambling figures emerged. Zombies, their flesh gray and peeling, animated by the necromantic energies that saturated the place. Skeletons, their bones clicking, armed with rusted swords and broken shields. To Castian, they were simply more filth to be purged. His storm bolter roared in the enclosed space, the sound deafening. Explosive bolts turned zombies into clouds of putrid mist. Skeletons were shattered into showers of bone fragments. He advanced through the nave, a relentless silver engine of destruction, his every step crushing the remains of the unholy dead underfoot. He descended into the crypts beneath the cathedral, the air growing colder, the stench of evil intensifying. Here, the resistance was stronger. Ghastly apparitions, spectral forms bound by sorrow and hatred, swooped from the darkness, their chilling touch seeking to drain his life force. Castian met their ethereal assault with the purity of his own soul. He unleashed a psychic blast, a wave of pure, sanctified energy, the hammerhand technique. The ghostly forms shrieked as the holy fire washed over them, their spectral bodies dissolving like smoke in a strong wind. He moved deeper, into a great, circular chamber. The floor was littered with mangled corpses, stitched together in a grotesque mockery of life, and in the center of the room, amidst a pile of rotting entrails, stood the source of the desecration. It was a hulking, bloated monstrosity, its flesh pale and sewn together with thick black stitches. It wielded a massive blood-stained cleaver in one hand and a cruel, hooked chain in the other. Its single dead eye fixed on Castian, and it let out a bellow of mindless, bloodthirsty rage. The Butcher. Greater Daemon. Castian identified, his voice cold and analytical. Classification. Brute. Threat level. Significant. The Butcher charged, its heavy footfalls shaking the crypt. It swung its great cleaver in a wide, decapitating arc. Castian met the charge. He did not dodge. He was clad in Terminator armor. He was the immovable object. He raised his Nemesis Force sword, meeting the cleaver's crude, brutal force with the elegant, focused power of his own blade. The impact sent a jarring shock up Castian's arm. The creature's strength was immense, fueled by pure demonic rage, but its skill was non-existent. Castian pushed back, his own strength amplified by his psychic might. He drove the Butcher back a step, then another. He moved with a speed and precision that the lumbering brute could not possibly match. His force sword became a blur of silver light. He severed the chain hook from the creature's arm. He scored a deep, cauterizing wound across its bloated belly. He parried a clumsy swing of the cleaver and used the opening to plunge his blade deep into the Butcher's shoulder joint, shattering the bone and rendering the arm useless. The Butcher roared in pain and fury, abandoning its cleaver and lunging forward, trying to grapple him, to crush him in its immense, powerful arms. Castian simply stepped inside its guard, raised his storm bolter, placed the muzzle against the creature's chest, and fired. A single, explosive bolt, fired at point-blank range, detonated within the Butcher's torso. The creature's bloated form exploded outwards in a catastrophic shower of gore, rotten flesh, and black, demonic ichor. Castian stood in the center of the carnage, his silver armor now drenched in the creature's foul fluids. He ignored it. He surveyed the chamber. The greater daemon was destroyed. The source of the immediate corruption was purged. He found the desecrated altar at the far end of the crypt. It was covered in filth and profane runes. He raised his free hand, and a pure, white flame erupted from his palm. Not physical fire, but the psychic fire of his own soul. He bathed the altar in the holy flame, burning away the filth, scouring the runes, cauterizing the spiritual wound in this place. When he was finished, the altar stone was clean, white, and seemed to pulse with a faint, gentle light. He knelt before it, performing the rites of sanctification, his resonant chant filling the now silent crypt. He had faced the heart of the darkness in this place, and he had cleansed it. It was a small victory in a vast, endless war, but it was a victory, and it was enough. For now, as Brother Captain Castian emerged from the now cleansed depths of the Tristram Cathedral, stepping back into the gray, rain-swept daylight, he felt a new presence. It was not demonic, it was not mortal. It was something else entirely. A column of brilliant golden light descended from the heavens, striking the muddy ground before him. The light was warm, pure, and resonated with a power that felt ancient and profound. It was not the cold, hard light of his own emperor. It was a different kind of light, a light of hope, of justice, of compassion. From the column of light, a figure emerged. It was an angel, clad in luminous, golden armor, its face hidden within the depths of a high cowl, its back adorned with great, shimmering wings woven from pure light. In its hand, it carried a sword that seemed to burn with a righteous blue-white fire, El Druin, the sword of justice. It was Tyrael, the archangel of wisdom. Castian immediately went on high alert. His auto-senses flared with warnings. Energy signature, unidentifiable. Power level, Omega. Classification, major warp entity. His doctrine was clear. Warp entities were inherently dangerous, their motives inscrutable, their true forms hidden behind illusions of light and glory. Even those that appeared benevolent could be servants of Jench, the great deceiver. He raised his Nemesis Force sword, its blade humming with contained psychic power. Identify yourself, entity. His voice boomed. A challenge, not a greeting. Tyrael regarded the silver giant before him. He felt the cold, hard certainty of the warrior's soul, the absolute, unwavering opposition to the demonic. But he also felt the deep, ingrained suspicion, the fanatical intolerance for anything that did not conform to his alien creed. I am Tyrael. The archangel's voice resonated, not with sound, but with a pure, melodic thought that touched Castian's mind directly. I am a servant of the high heavens. We have felt your presence in this world, warrior. We have seen your deeds against the legions of the burning hells. Castian processed the information. High heavens, burning hells. It fit the crude, dualistic cosmology of most primitive cultures. He lowered his sword slightly, but his stance remained guarded. You fight the daemon, Castian stated. Your goals align with the Emperor's will, but your nature is suspect. Are you an ally of mankind? We are allies of all who stand against the prime evils, Tyrael replied carefully. Humanity holds a unique place in the balance of creation. We seek to protect it. Protection through inaction? Castian countered, gesturing to the blighted ruins around them. This world drowns in corruption. Your high heavens have allowed this festering wound to grow. Your vigilance is lax. Your methods are insufficient. Tyrael felt a flicker of annoyance at the mortal's arrogance, but suppressed it. The eternal conflict is a war of balance, warrior. We cannot interfere directly in the affairs of sanctuary, lest we shatter the very world we seek to protect. Humanity must choose its own path. Choice is a weakness the daemon exploits, Castian retorted, the words a core tenet of his faith. There is only one path, the path of the Emperor. Absolute obedience, absolute faith, absolute purity. All else is heresy. The ideological chasm between them was becoming starkly clear. Tyrael fought for balance, for free will, for the potential of humanity to rise above its flaws. Castian fought for absolute order, for forced compliance, for the eradication of all that did not conform to his emperor's divine plan. "Your emperor," Tyrael began, treading carefully. "This being you serve. He is not of the light we know. He is the master of mankind," Castian declared, his voice ringing with absolute, unshakable conviction. "He is the sole, true God of humanity. All other powers are false idols or manipulative warp entities." Tyrael now understood. This warrior's faith was a thing of immense power, but it was a blind, exclusive faith. He was not just fighting hell, he was fighting for his own, specific version of heaven, and he would likely see any other power, even the true high heavens, as a rival. "Your path is a dangerous one, Grey Knight," Tyrael warned, his voice gentle but firm. "Absolute certainty can be as blinding as absolute darkness. Sanctuary is a world of shades of gray. Do not become the monster you fight by embracing an equal opposite intolerance." "There are no shades of gray when facing the daemon," Castian stated flatly. "There is only purity and corruption, light and darkness, the Emperor's will and heresy. I will cleanse this world, whether your high heavens approve or not." He turned his back on the Archangel, a gesture of dismissal. He had his mission. He had his faith. He needed no other guidance. Tyrael watched him go, a deep sense of foreboding filling his ancient heart. He had looked into the soul of the Grey Knight and had seen not evil, but a terrifying, absolute certainty. A certainty that could be a powerful weapon against hell, yes, but a certainty that could also, if pointed in the wrong direction, shatter the very foundations of sanctuary and heaven alike. He was an ally of circumstance, but his path was a lonely, dangerous, and ultimately heretical one. Brother Captain Castian continued his solitary crusade, moving through the blighted lands like a silver angel of death. He was a force of nature, a localized extinction event for the demonic populations he encountered. Word of his deeds, garbled and exaggerated, began to spread among the scattered, terrified human settlements. They spoke of a giant golem of silver, a new protector who fought the darkness with a cold, terrifying fury. But his relentless purging had also drawn the focused, malevolent attention of the Lord of Destruction himself. Baal, from his infernal throne, watched the Grey Knight's progress with a mixture of rage and cold, calculating interest. This warrior was disrupting his plans, yes, but he was also a fascinating specimen of power and resilience. Baal decided a true test was in order. He would send one of his favored champions, a creature not of mindless rage, but of considerable strength and cunning. He summoned forth Korgath, a pit lord of immense size and brutality, a veteran of the eternal conflict who had claimed the skulls of countless angels and heroes. Korgath materialized in sanctuary in a blast of fire and brimstone, his massive reptilian form radiating an aura of pure, destructive power. He tracked the Grey Knight's psychic spoor and found him in the desolate, rocky expanse of the Aranok Desert. Castian felt the approach of the greater daemon long before he saw it. The psychic pressure was immense, a wave of pure, destructive intent. He turned, his nemesis force sword igniting, his stance settling into a perfect, balanced guard. Korgath roared, a sound like an avalanche, and charged. He was a mountain of muscle and demonic fury, wielding a colossal, two-headed flail wreathed in hellfire. The battle began. It was a brutal contest of opposing forces. Korgath's strength was unbelievable, each swing of his massive flail capable of shattering boulders. He fought with a direct, overwhelming power, seeking to simply crush the smaller opponent beneath his bulk. Castian was faster, more agile, his movements augmented by his psychic senses. He met the pit lord's brute force with precision and tactical genius. He weaved between the flail's clumsy, predictable swings, his force sword lashing out, carving deep, cauterizing wounds in the demon's thick hide. But Korgath was a creature of immense resilience. The wounds slowed him, angered him, but they did not stop him. He managed to land a glancing blow, the head of his flail striking Castian's shoulder pauldron. The blessed ceramite cracked, and Castian was thrown back, skidding across the rocky ground. He rose instantly, his auto-senses reporting minor armor damage but no physical injury. He reassessed. Direct physical confrontation was costly against a foe of this magnitude. He needed to utilize his true strength. He changed his tactics. He began to fight not just with his sword, but with his mind. He unleashed a psychic barrage. Bolts of pure white soul fire hammered against the Pit Lord's consciousness. Korgath roared in a new kind of pain, clutching its massive head. The psychic assault was an agony it could not simply shrug off. Castian pressed his advantage. He used telekinesis to rip jagged shards of rock from the ground and hurl them at the demon like missiles, forcing it onto the defensive. He created shimmering illusions, phantoms of himself attacking from multiple angles, confusing the creature's simple, direct mind. But Korgath was a champion for a reason. Its will, though crude, was immensely strong. It fought through the psychic pain, its eyes burning with a new, focused hatred. It ignored the illusions and charged again, its flail swinging in a wide, devastating arc designed to obliterate everything in its path. Castian knew he could not simply dodge this. He had to meet it. He channeled his own psychic power, not outwards, but inwards, reinforcing his own body, his own armor, with a shimmering shield of pure will, the sanctuary discipline. He met the flail's arc, not with his sword, but with his armored forearm. The impact was titanic. A shockwave erupted, cracking the very ground beneath them. Castian held his ground, his arm trembling under the immense demonic force, but the shield held, and in that moment of locked, straining deadlock, he found his opening. With his other hand, he drove his nemesis force sword upwards, under the Pit Lord's guard, plunging the glowing silver blade deep into the creature's chest, aiming for the black, corrupted heart within. He poured his full, concentrated psychic might into the blade, unleashing the full force of his holy power. Korgath let out a final, deafening roar, a sound of mingled agony and disbelief. A brilliant, white light exploded from within its chest, consuming its massive form. When the light faded, there was nothing left but a fine, black ash, quickly scattered by the desert wind. Castian stood alone in the desolate landscape, his breathing heavy, his armor scarred, his psychic reserves depleted. He had won. He had defeated one of Hell's greatest champions, but the victory had come at a cost. He was wounded, his armor damaged. He was powerful, yes, but he was not invulnerable. He was one warrior against an entire dimension of evil, and he knew, with a cold, grim certainty, that Baal would send more, stronger, faster, worse. His war had just become significantly more personal and significantly more dangerous. The defeat of Korgath sent a tremor of fear through the ranks of the burning hells, but it also solidified Brother Captain Castian's reputation among the scattered, terrified populace of Sanctuary. Tales of the Silver Knight who could unmake demons spread like wildfire, a fragile new spark of hope in a world drowning in despair. Castian, however, had little time for hope or legends. He was a soldier, and his tactical assessment was grim. He was winning his battles, yes, but he was fighting skirmishes, isolated engagements. The demonic tide was vast, unending, and his solitary crusade was like trying to empty an ocean with a bucket. He needed intelligence. He needed to find the source of the corruption, the primary locus of the demonic incursion. It was Adria, the Nephilim sorceress he had encountered at the ruined monastery, who found him again. She had tracked him, drawn by the psychic echo of his battle with the Pit Lord. She found him meditating amidst a circle of slain demons, his silver armor still smoking slightly from the encounter. "You fight well, knight," she said, her voice cautious, keeping a respectful distance. "But you fight blind. You kill the symptoms, but you do not see the disease." Castian opened his eyes, his blue lenses fixing on her. "Psyker," he stated flatly. "You follow me. State your purpose, or be purged." "My purpose is the same as yours," Adria retorted, refusing to be intimidated. "To drive the demons back into the hells they crawled from. But unlike you, I know this land. I know our enemy. There is a place, an old Zakarum stronghold to the east, that has become a fortress for Baal's legions. It is a cancer, spreading his corruption through the surrounding lands. If you truly wish to strike a blow against the darkness, that is where you must go." Castian considered her words. His auto-senses registered no deception in her physiological responses. Her psychic aura, though chaotic and untrained, burned with a genuine hatred for the demonic. The tactical intelligence aligned with his own observations of the demonic concentrations in the region. "You propose an alliance," Castian stated, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. Alliances with unsanctioned psychers were forbidden. Her very existence was a potential heresy. "I propose a temporary cessation of hostilities between potential allies who share a common, overwhelming enemy," Adria corrected him carefully. "I need your strength to break their gates. You need my knowledge of their magic, their weaknesses, to survive what lies within." The logic was undeniable. His faith dictated that she was unclean, a potential vessel for the very evil he fought. But his duty dictated that he must strike at the heart of the enemy, use any tool necessary to achieve the Emperor's will. It was a conflict between doctrine and pragmatism, a test of his rigid, unwavering code. He rose to his feet, his decision made. "Very well, Psyker," he conceded, his voice a low growl. "We will proceed to this stronghold. We will purge it. You will provide tactical intelligence. You will obey my commands without question. Any deviation, any sign of corruption or treacherous intent, and I will execute you myself. Is that understood?" Adria met his gaze, her own eyes flashing with a mixture of resentment and grudging respect. "Understood, Knight. Just try not to incinerate everything that isn't wearing silver armor." The uneasy alliance was formed. The Grey Knight, the living embodiment of holy order and imperial dogma, and the Nephilim, a creature of chaotic power and fierce independence, set off together. They were oil and water, faith and magic, discipline and chaos. But they were united, for now, by a single, burning purpose: to bring war to the heart of Hell's fortress. While Castian and Adria waged their uneasy war against the demonic stronghold, Deckard Cain remained in the relative safety of a hidden encampment, surrounded by the fearful, hopeful survivors who looked to him for guidance. His mind, however, was far from safe. It was consumed by the riddle of the Silver Knight. He sat hunched over his collection of ancient scrolls and crumbling texts, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the walls of his tent. He searched for answers, for any mention, any hint, of a power like the one he had witnessed. He reread the prophecies of the end times, the tales of the eternal conflict, the fragmented histories of the Nephilim. He found stories of angels in golden armor, of demons clad in shadow and fire. He found legends of ancient heroes wielding magical blades. He found whispers of beings with immense, world-shaking power. He found nothing that matched the reality of Brother Captain Castian. The armor, seamless and impossibly resilient, defied the craftsmanship of any known age or race. The weapon, the humming silver sword that could annihilate a demon's soul, operated on principles unknown to Horadric magic. The psychic power, the cold, disciplined force of will that could crush minds and repel sorcery, was unlike the chaotic energies of Sanctuary's magic users or the holy light of the angels. And the faith. That was the greatest mystery of all. The knight spoke with absolute, unwavering conviction of a God-Emperor of mankind. He preached a doctrine of purging, of holy war, of the absolute supremacy of humanity. He saw demons not just as enemies, but as heresy incarnate. Cain searched the oldest texts, the fragments that hinted at the creation of Sanctuary, the records of the Sin War, the writings of the first Horadrim. He found mentions of Anu and Tathamet, the progenitors of angels and demons. He found the names of the Valar-like figures who had shaped distant, forgotten worlds. He found myriad gods and spirits worshipped by the primitive tribes of Sanctuary's dawn. He found no emperor, no imperium, no Grey Knights, no Chapter 666. The Silver Knight's entire cosmology, his entire reason for being, seemed to have no root, no connection, to the known history or mythology of their world. It was as if he had truly fallen from another star, from a reality with entirely different gods and different devils. This realization filled Cain with a profound sense of dread. If the knight was truly alien to their world, then what were his ultimate goals? He fought the demons, yes. But did he see Sanctuary itself as anything more than another alien world to be purged or brought into compliance once the immediate demonic threat was dealt with? His absolute intolerance, his talk of heresy and Xenos filth, a term Cain had managed to decipher from the knight's occasional mutterings, suggested a worldview that was terrifyingly narrow and potentially hostile to all life in Sanctuary that did not fit his rigid definition of purity. Cain found himself trapped in a paradox. He had witnessed the knight's power. He knew that this single warrior might possess the strength to turn the tide against the prime evils, perhaps even to succeed where the Horadrim had failed. But he also feared that the price of that victory might be the soul of Sanctuary itself. To trade the hot, chaotic tyranny of hell for the cold, absolute tyranny of this unknown emperor, was that truly a salvation? He looked up from his scrolls, his old eyes weary. He had spent his life searching for knowledge, for answers in the lore of the past. But the past held no answers for the future that was now unfolding. The Silver Knight was a blank page, a new variable that defied all known equations. And Deckard Cain, the last of the Horadrim, could only pray that the story written on that page would be one of salvation, and not of a new, colder, and even more terrible form of damnation. Baal, Lord of Destruction, watched the Grey Knight's progress with a cold, analytical amusement. The creature was powerful, yes. Its resistance to physical harm and demonic sorcery was formidable. Its ability to annihilate the essences of his lesser minions was inconvenient. But Baal was a prime evil. His true weapons were not claws and fire. They were manipulation, corruption, and the slow, insidious poisoning of the soul. He had felt Castian's mind, that fortress of iron faith. A direct assault was useless. But even the strongest fortress has cracks. Even the purest faith has doubts, however small, however deeply buried. Baal's art was finding those cracks and widening them until the entire structure collapsed. He began his assault not with a legion, but with a whisper. As Castian fought his way through the corrupted Zakarum stronghold alongside Adria, battling hordes of grotesque, mutated zealots and powerful succubi commanders, the whispers began. They were not the chaotic, screeching voices of lesser demons. They were subtle, insidious, and they sounded unnervingly like the voices he yearned to hear. Brother Captain Castian. The voice was deep, resonant, filled with a fatherly, authoritative warmth. It sounded almost like, "The Emperor. You fight well, my son. Your faith is strong, but you are alone." Castian faltered for a fraction of a second, his nemesis force sword pausing in mid-swing. He scanned his psychic senses. There was no friendly presence. It was a trick, a daimonic illusion. He recited the third canto of purity and pushed the voice away. But the whispers returned, adapting, changing their approach. They came during his brief moments of rest, during his solitary prayers. They showed him visions, not of power or glory, but of his brothers. He saw the faces of the Grey Knights he had lost in the warp storm, their silver armor cracked, their eyes filled with accusation. "You failed us, Castian. You led us into the storm. You abandoned us." He felt a pang, a flicker of guilt, a microscopic crack in his iron resolve. He banished the vision with a surge of psychic fire. Guilt was a weakness. Failure was not an option. The whispers changed again, becoming colder, more logical, mimicking the voice of his own Grand Master on Titan. "Your mission here is futile, Captain. This world is too deeply corrupted. You cannot cleanse it alone. Your Emperor has forgotten you. You are a lost soldier in a meaningless war. Your sacrifice will be for nothing." It was a seed of despair, planted in the fertile ground of his isolation. He fought it back, clinging to the bedrock of his faith. The Emperor protects, duty endures, even unto death. But Baal was relentless. He saw the core of Castian's being, his absolute, unwavering sense of duty, and he began to twist it. He sent visions not of failure, but of success, a twisted, corrupted success. He showed Castian a vision of the Zakarum stronghold, its demonic taint purged, but the method was horrifying. Castian saw himself standing over the bodies of not just demons, but human cultists, men and women whose minds had been broken by demonic influence. He saw himself executing them all, purging the taint by annihilating the vessel. "It is the only way, Captain," the voice whispered, now sounding like Castian's own cold, pragmatic thoughts. "The corruption is too deep. Mercy is a weakness. To save this world, you must be willing to burn it clean. Acceptable casualties. The greater good. The Emperor demands no less." This was the true temptation, not power, not despair, but the insidious logic of absolute, uncompromising purity. The idea that to defeat the monster, he must become an even greater monster. That his holy crusade required acts of utter, ruthless pragmatism that bordered on atrocity. Castian recoiled from the vision, his soul chilled. "No," he growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "The innocent must be protected. The line between justice and slaughter must hold." But the seed was planted. The doubt was there. Was it possible to wage this war, alone, against such overwhelming darkness, without compromising the very principles he fought for? Bale felt the flicker of doubt, and he smiled, a slow, cruel stretching of his demonic features. The fortress was still standing, but he had found a crack in the wall, and the Lord of Destruction was infinitely patient. He would whisper, he would wait, and eventually, even the purest souls would break. The uneasy alliance between Brother Captain Castian and the Nephilim Adria, though fraught with tension, proved devastatingly effective. They carved a path through the corrupted Zakarum stronghold, their conflicting styles, Castian's disciplined purging and Adria's chaotic elemental fury, shattering the demonic legions within. They fought their way to the heart of the fortress, a desecrated inner sanctum where a council of succubi commanders was performing a ritual to further spread Baal's influence. The battle was furious. Castian was a silver whirlwind, his nemesis force sword unmaking the demoness's physical forms, his psychic defenses proof against their seductive illusions. Adria was a storm of lightning and fire, her raw, untamed power incinerating the lesser demons that guarded their mistresses. Together, they broke the coven, shattering the ritual and momentarily halting Baal's advance in the region. They stood amidst the carnage, the inner sanctum now cleansed but ruined. A moment of exhausted silence fell between them. "We did it," Adria breathed, a note of disbelief in her voice. "We actually did it. The primary demonic locus has been neutralized," Castian stated, his tone flat and analytical as he performed the initial rites of cleansing over the desecrated ground. "But the taint remains. This entire structure must be razed." "Razed?" Adria protested. "This was a holy place once. It could be reclaimed." "Corruption cannot be reclaimed," Castian countered, his voice hard as steel. "It can only be purged." With fire. Before their argument could escalate, a new light filled the chamber. It was not the sickly green of demonic energy, nor the cold silver of Castian's power. It was a brilliant, blinding gold. From the high, shattered ceiling, figures descended, borne on wings of pure white light. Angels, clad in magnificent golden armor, their faces serene but stern, their swords drawn and burning with holy fire. At their head was a figure of imposing, arrogant majesty, his armor more ornate, his wings broader, his spear crackling with divine power. It was Imperius, the Archangel of Valor, and his patrol host. They had felt the surge of power from the battle, the psychic screams of the dying succubi, and the cold alien presence of the Grey Knight. They had come to investigate, and what they found only confirmed Imperius's deepest prejudices. "Mortal," Imperius's voice boomed, a sound of celestial thunder, directed at Castian. "You trespass in realms that are not your own. You wield a power that is unsanctioned. You fight our war, but you fight it with arrogance and brutality. Your presence here is an insult to the high heavens." Castian turned, his force sword still humming, his stance immediately shifting to one of wary defense. He saw beings of immense power, radiating an energy that felt superficially similar to the Emperor's light, but different, colder, more arrogant. "I am Brother Captain Castian of the Adeptus Astartes," he declared, meeting Imperius's gaze without flinching. "I fight the great enemy, as is my sacred duty. Your identity and authority are unknown to me. Stand aside, entities, or be classified as hostile." Imperius laughed, a harsh, contemptuous sound. "Hostile? You dare speak of hostility to the Archangel of Valor? You are a flawed, ephemeral creature, playing at war. Your methods are clumsy, your faith misplaced in some false emperor. You are little better than the Nephilim filth you consort with," he added, gesturing dismissively at Adria. Adria bristled, her hands crackling with lightning. "My faith is absolute," Castian retorted, his own voice rising in a cold fury. "My emperor is the master of mankind, the light against the shadow. Your high heavens watched as this world fell into darkness. Your inaction is complicity. You are unworthy of the power you wield." The theological and ideological impasse was absolute. Imperius saw a flawed mortal usurping the angel's divine right to wage the eternal conflict. Castian saw an arrogant, inactive power block that had failed in its sacred duty to protect humanity. "You will cease your interference, mortal," Imperius commanded, leveling his spear, Solarion. "You will lay down your arms and submit to the judgment of the Anguirus Council." "I submit only to the judgment of the Emperor," Castian snarled. "And he judges you wanting." The battle erupted in a blinding flash of gold and silver. Castian charged, his force sword meeting Imperius's spear of valor in a shower of divine and psychic sparks. The other angels moved to engage, but Adria, seeing her chance, unleashed a massive wave of chain lightning, momentarily stunning them. Castian and Imperius were locked in a duel of gods and demigods. Imperius fought with the perfect, effortless grace of an archangel, his spear a blur of golden light, each blow carrying the force of a collapsing star. Castian fought with the disciplined fury of a gray knight, his sword a shield of faith, his mind a fortress against the angel's holy power. The battle was a stalemate. Imperius's light could not overwhelm Castian's faith. Castian's blade could not penetrate Imperius's celestial armor. It was Tyrael's arrival that stopped the fight. Manifesting in a column of softer blue-white light, the Archangel of Wisdom stepped between the two combatants. "Enough, Imperius," Tyrael commanded, his voice filled with a weary authority. "He fights our enemy. This conflict serves only the hells." Imperius hesitated, his spear still crackling, his face a mask of arrogant fury. But he respected Tyrael's wisdom, if not his methods. He slowly lowered his weapon. Castian, sensing the shift, also lowered his sword, though his stance remained guarded. "Grey Knight," Tyrael said, his gaze both piercing and compassionate. "Your path is not our path. Your faith is not our faith. But your enemy is our enemy. Let there be a truce between us. Go your way. Purge the darkness as you see fit. But know this: the high heavens watch you. Do not mistake our tolerance for acceptance. The balance of this world is fragile. Do not shatter it with your certainty." The angels ascended, vanishing back into the celestial realm, leaving Castian and Adria alone once more in the ruined sanctum. The conflict had been averted, but the message was clear. Castian was not just fighting hell. He was now an unwelcome, distrusted anomaly in the eyes of heaven as well. He was truly, utterly alone. The confrontation with the angels left Brother Captain Castian unmoved in his core beliefs, but it reinforced a critical tactical reality. He was isolated. He had no allies he could trust, not the chaotic Nephilim, not the arrogant angels, and certainly not the ancient, cryptic scholar Cain. His crusade was a solitary one. He continued his purge, moving relentlessly through the blighted lands, his path a swathe of annihilated demonic presence. But he was fighting symptoms, not the disease. He knew, with the cold logic of a space marine commander, that to truly win this war, he had to strike at the source. Where was the heart of this infection? Where was the primary warp gate that allowed these legions of daemons to pour into this reality? He sought answers in the only place he could, the minds of his enemies. Every time he faced a powerful demon, a succubus queen, a Balrog commander, a council of death lords, he would end the battle not with a simple killing blow, but with a focused psychic assault. He would shatter their minds and sift through the screaming fragments of their consciousness, searching for strategic intelligence. It was a dangerous, soul-staining process, exposing his own sanctified mind to the raw, unfiltered madness of the warp. But he was a gray knight. His mental fortitude was absolute. He took the information he needed and purged the rest with rites of detestation. Slowly, fragment by painful fragment, a picture began to emerge. The demons spoke, in their dying, psychic screams, of a great nexus of power, a heart, a stone, a thing called the World Stone. He did not understand its nature in the context of this world's cosmology, but he understood its function in the language of his own reality. It was a massive psychic amplifier. It was a stabilizer that anchored this reality, this sanctuary, between the competing dimensions of heaven and hell. And it was, he deduced, the source and the conduit through which the prime evils exerted their corrupting influence. In his mind, the classification became clear. The World Stone was the primary warp gate. It was the Archimedes point upon which this entire reality turned. To control it, or to destroy it, would be to end the eternal conflict, or at least this theater of it. His path was now clear. He turned his gaze towards the frozen north, towards the barbarian lands, towards the snow-capped peaks of Mount Arete. That was where the whispers of the dying demons pointed. That was where the heart of the world lay hidden. His journey became a relentless, northward trek. He crossed burning deserts. He navigated treacherous jungles. He climbed impassable mountains. He fought countless battles along the way, his silver armor becoming scarred, his reserves of psychic energy taxed, but his purpose never wavered. He arrived, finally, in the cold, harsh lands of the north. He saw the great mountain, Arete, a sleeping giant on the horizon, and he felt it. An immense, ancient, and deeply wounded power emanated from its peak. It was the World Stone. And it was corrupted, tainted, infected by the very evil it was meant to hold at bay. Baal. The whispers in the psychic ether were clear. The Lord of Destruction had reached the heart of the world. Castian knew his final battle was at hand. He began his ascent of the holy mountain, a lone, silver figure against the snow and ice. He was no longer just purging symptoms. He was going to cut out the heart of the disease itself. For the Emperor, the ascent of Mount Arete was a journey through a frozen, windswept hell. The slopes were guarded not by natural beasts, but by the twisted, corrupted remnants of the barbarian tribes who had once protected the holy mountain. They were possessed, their bodies warped, their eyes burning with the fires of destruction. Brother Captain Castian moved through them like an avalanche of pure, righteous fury. His storm bolter roared, its explosive shells shattering the corrupted warriors. His nemesis Foresword sang, its silver blade a blur of annihilation against the darkness. He was a single, unstoppable force, climbing towards the summit, towards the source of the corruption. He breached the World Stone Keep, the ancient, crumbling fortress that guarded the heart of the mountain. The interior was a nightmare landscape, the very stone warped and corrupted by Baal's presence. Legions of hell's finest warriors stood against him, elite demon knights, waves of soul flayers, and the grotesque, bloated forms of vile mothers birthing new horrors into the world. Castian fought his way through them all. He was wounded, his armor battered, his psychic energy stretched thin. But his faith was a burning, unquenchable fire. Every blow he struck was a prayer. Every demon he unmade was a testament to his holy purpose. He finally reached the World Stone chamber. It was a vast, crystalline cavern, the air itself vibrating with unimaginable power. And at its center floated the World Stone itself, the Eye of Anu, the heart of sanctuary. It was a colossal, multifaceted jewel, larger than his strike cruiser, pulsing with a deep, chaotic and terrifying red light. It was wounded, corrupted, poisoned, and standing before it, his back to Castian, was the source of the poison. A figure wreathed in shadow and flame, its form shifting and indistinct, but radiating an aura of absolute, cosmic-level power and pure, unadulterated malice. Baal, the Lord of Destruction. Baal turned, his burning eyes fixing on the Grey Knight. A slow, cruel smile spread across his demonic features. So, the little silver knight has come to the heart of it all. His voice echoed, a sound of continents breaking. You have proven surprisingly resilient, more entertaining than the angels, more focused than the Nephilim. Daemon, Castian's voice boomed, his force sword held ready. Your reign of corruption ends now. In the name of the Emperor, I will purge you from this reality. Baal laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the chamber. The Emperor? That distant corpse god on his golden prison? I have felt his feeble light. It is nothing compared to the power I now command. He gestured towards the corrupted world stone. This world is mine, little knight. Its heart beats to my rhythm. Its power flows through my veins. You have come here only to die, and to add your surprisingly pure soul to my collection. The final battle began. It was not a clash of armies. It was a duel of gods. Baal unleashed the full, unrestrained power of destruction. Waves of hellfire washed over Castian, forcing him to raise his psychic Aegis shield to its absolute limit. The ground erupted around him, great spikes of corrupted stone trying to impale him. Clones of Baal, shadowy and filled with hate, flickered into existence, their claws tearing at his armor. Castian met the onslaught with the full might of a Grey Knight Grand Master. He banished the clones with waves of purifying soul fire. He shattered the stone spikes with telekinetic force. He walked through the hellfire, his faith an absolute, unwavering shield. He reached Baal, and their weapons met. The Nemesis forced sword against the swirling, chaotic energies of destruction itself. Their battle raged across the chamber, a blur of silver and shadow, of holy light and hellfire. Castian fought with the perfect disciplined technique of his order. Baal fought with the raw, unpredictable fury of a prime evil. Castian was wounded again and again. His armor cracked, his body bled. But his will did not break. His faith did not falter. He knew that to yield, even for an instant, would be to invite damnation. He saw his opening. Baal, in his arrogance, overextended, unleashing a massive wave of destructive energy that left him momentarily exposed. Castian lunged. He poured every last ounce of his psychic power, every last drop of his faith, into his blade. The Nemesis Force sword became a thing of pure, incandescent, white-hot light, brighter than the Sunday. He drove the blade deep into Baal's shadowy form, aiming not for a physical heart, but for the spiritual core, the nexus of his being. For the Emperor, he roared, the name a final, absolute declaration of his purpose. Baal screamed. It was not a sound of pain, but of pure, absolute shock and disbelief. The holy, sanctified energy of the Grey Knight's soul, focused through the Nemesis blade, was not just destroying his physical form. It was attacking his very essence, his connection to the burning hells, his fundamental nature as a prime evil. A brilliant, white light exploded outwards from the point of impact, consuming Baal's shadowy form. The light was absolute, purifying, and final. When it faded, the Lord of Destruction was gone, not banished, not defeated, unmade. Castian stood alone in the silent chamber, his sword still glowing, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had done the impossible. He had faced a prime evil, and he had won. Brother Captain Castian stood victorious but depleted in the heart of the Worldstone chamber. The psychic echo of Baal's annihilation still resonated in the air, a profound and utter silence where a maelstrom of evil had been. He had fulfilled his ultimate duty. He had faced the greater daemon and purged it from existence, but his victory was a grim one. He looked at the Worldstone. The colossal artifact, the heart of this reality, still pulsed with a sickly, corrupted red light. Baal was gone, but his poison remained, deeply embedded in the very fabric of sanctuary. The wound was mortal, the infection systemic. Castian knew, with the cold certainty of his order, what had to be done. A limb infected with terminal heresy could not be healed. It had to be amputated. A world tainted to its very core could not be saved. It had to be purified. Utterly, his original mission, The cleansing of this single daemon world had just escalated. His new mission was exterminatus. He was a Grey Knight. He possessed the knowledge of the final rites, the rituals of absolute destruction reserved for worlds deemed beyond salvation. But he lacked the means. He had no fleet in orbit to deliver the cyclonic torpedoes. He had no legion of Astartes to enact the ground purge. He had only himself, his faith, and his power. He looked at the World Stone again. It was the source of the corruption. It was the gateway. It was the heart. If he could destroy it, or perhaps sanctify it, could he pour his own holy power into it, overwrite Baal's taint with the Emperor's light? It was a terrifying, perhaps suicidal thought. The sheer, unimaginable scale of the World Stone's power dwarfed his own psychic might by orders of magnitude. To attempt such a feat would be like trying to purify an ocean with a single drop of holy water. He would likely be consumed, his soul shattered, his essence scattered across eternity, but his duty was absolute. The taint could not be allowed to remain. The potential for the prime evils to return, to use this corrupted nexus to once again poison reality, was too great. He made his decision, not with logic, but with faith. He would become the Emperor's final sanction upon this world. He planted his nemesis force sword deep into the crystalline floor before the pulsating, corrupted heart of the World Stone. He knelt, placing his gauntleted hands upon the pommel of his blade. He closed his eyes, shutting out the physical world, and turned his entire being inward, then outward. He began the ultimate ritual. Not the ritual of banishing, but the litany of true sacrifice. He opened his soul, his mind, his very essence, and offered it all up to the Emperor. He became a conduit, a burning lens, focusing not just his own power, but the theoretical, belief-fueled psychic might of the God Emperor himself, across the gulf of realities, into this one, single point. His silver armor began to glow, first with a soft white light, then with an incandescent, blinding brilliance. The runes etched into his armor burned like brands. The air around him crackled with ozone and the scent of purifying fire. He poured his light, his faith, his very being, into the corrupted World Stone. The great artifact shuddered. The sickly red light within it began to war with the pure, silver light emanating from the Grey Knight. Two absolute, opposing forces met at the heart of creation. The outcome was unknown. The chamber was filled with a light so bright, so absolute, that it consumed all sight, all sense. Did he succeed? Did he purify the World Stone, healing sanctuary at the cost of his own existence? Did he shatter it, as Tyrael would later do, unleashing the Nephilim upon the world but also breaking the eternal cycle? Did the conflicting energies simply annihilate each other, leaving behind only a void? Or did he become trapped, his sanctified soul forever locked in an eternal, internal battle against the lingering corruption within the stone, a silent, unseen guardian forever holding back the tide? The light faded. The World Stone chamber was silent, empty. Brother Captain Castian was gone. Whether he was ascended, destroyed, or transformed, none could say. But in the world outside, the reign of the prime evils was broken. A fragile, uncertain peace began to settle over the scarred lands of sanctuary. The deeds of the mysterious Silver Knight, the Golem of Fury, became legend, a story whispered by scholars like Cain, a tale of a power that came from nowhere, fought the greatest of evils, and then vanished as swiftly as it arrived. He was a ghost, a myth, his true purpose, his true fate, forever unknown. But the world he had bled for, the world he had perhaps died for, had been given another chance. And in the grim darkness of the far future, perhaps that was the only victory that truly mattered.